I'm sorry, but too many American journalists are just ill-equipped, ignorant, and should not be covering these events. But all of these different news outlets think they can send people out into conflict and unrest without training. And you know what? I can't necessarily sympathize with these people. Look, I do, but if you don't know how to cover this stuff, if you don't have training, if you've never been on the ground and you just waltz out, don't be surprised if you get hurt. If you're a news company, you send people out, don't be surprised if they get hurt. Now, I want to be fair. The first story I have for you has to do with CNN. Now, CNN didn't send people out. They did. But what I mean is this story was the protesters coming to CNN HQ. And when these people were covering it, they weren't prepared for what was going to happen. And this stuff melts my brain. This story right here. CNN HQ in Atlanta, defaced by protesters. Here's another one. Fox News crew harassed, chased by angry mob while reporting on protests outside of the White House. And in Louisville, the police shot at a reporter and cameraman with pepper balls, even hitting the camera in the middle of a live broadcast. I don't care if it's the cops. I don't care if it's the protesters. Everybody's going nuts. Everyone's on edge. The police should not be shooting at reporters. I have been shot at by police in riots. You know why? They don't know or care what you're doing or why you're doing it. They have orders. Sometimes they're too stupid to actually react properly. Yes, I'm going to be disrespectful on this one. Why? I'll tell you a story that I was told by a buddy of mine. There was a big protest, riot kind of event. I say riot kind of because it wasn't like this. It was like protests and they started throwing rocks. The police showed up and surrounded a park. And everyone just dispersed and walked away because the protest had ended. And the police just stood there for like an hour because they'd never gotten orders to do anything else. How stupid is this? Meanwhile, all the protesters started walking around doing other things. That's what I mean by sometimes the cops are too stupid too. I get it. They have to follow orders to make sure there's a system in place. But I'll tell you what, man, if you're a cop and you're told to go stand around an empty park and do nothing while protesters romp about the city, you got a problem with your city. You got a problem with the system. There needs to be something to fix that. But that's very different from this cop just blatantly shooting a journalist, which should not have happened. To make it worse, I'm seeing people on Twitter saying things like, it's almost like Trump told the American people for 3 years that the press was the enemy of the people. Oh, shut up, dude. In 2012, I was in Anaheim, and the cops just started shooting randomly at me. I was by myself on the street, okay? There was nothing around us, and we started getting shot at. All right. Whatever, man. You want to give me whatever excuse or whatever reason for why they did that? I don't care. It happened. It is what it is. Okay, I get it. Everyone's on edge. But take a look at this CNN story. This is where I want to be fair and say the CNN crew was in the lobby of their own building, but we have this video clip. Well, let me read for you what NBC reported. These people don't understand what they're dealing with, and thus, even in their own building, are ill-equipped to handle this stuff. Protesters damaged windows outside CNN's headquarters in Atlanta on Friday and spray painted a company sign. Atlanta was one of many U.S. cities where large protests broke out. We know that. Some of the protesters targeted CNN's nearby building, breaking windows and defacing the large CNN sign outside the building. A small group of police officers entered the building to ensure protesters remained on the outside. CNN broadcast scenes from the building's lobby where law enforcement had been positioned. At one point, some small explosions that appeared to be firecrackers. Firecrackers, these people are morons. Firecrackers thrown by protesters into the building pushed CNN's Nick Valencia to retreat farther into the building. Someone threw what is colloquially known as mortar shell fireworks or artillery shell fireworks. These things are extremely dangerous. They're explosives. The police, man, wow. Outside, okay, I don't want to show the full video because, you know, you can find this online. But we can see all of the protesters lined up outside. Someone lobs in one of these, I guess, you know, mortar shell fireworks. Let's see if it starts in the beginning. You can see it fly in. There it is. All right, here it is right here. You can see that. It lands next to the cops who just stand there and duck. Man, you know, look. The reason the cops may not have moved is because they needed to hold the line. They didn't want to break the line in case the protesters were doing this to break in. The journalists are standing there like shocked and freaked out that, boom, Someone threw an explosive into your building. I think it's hilarious. Firecracker, they say over and over again. It's funny. I was in Berkeley, and they were throwing M80s. M80s are extremely powerful. You can lose your hand. And somebody threw one, and it landed near an old woman who fell down. And I said, they're throwing explosives. And then all of these lefties were like, oh, they're just firecrackers. Shut your mouth. You throw anything that blows up, fine. But a firecracker is that little thing. You ever see those little things? They come in a packet, and you light the wick, and it goes pop, 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 makes a bunch of pops. Those are firecrackers. That's what they're called, crackers. These are explosives. Fireworks, maybe? Sure. They're still explosive. They're still dangerous. And that thing can seriously injure somebody. But too many of these journalists are too stupid to actually report on what's really happening. But I'll tell you what. Let me tell you about what I call the culture war wager. And I'll explain to you why these journalists probably keep bending over backwards to defend the riots. You may be familiar with Pascal's wager, right? This, I think, is not completely logically sound, but the argument is if you believe in God and there is no God and you die, so what? Nothing happens. If you believe in God and there is a God and you die, congratulations, you go to heaven. If you don't believe in God and there is no God, nothing happens. If you don't believe in God and there is one, well, now you're in trouble, right? The argument is thus, you should believe in God because that way, it's the safest option to take. The culture war wager is similar. Right now, the factions we have are the armed, violent left and conservatives. The fringe far-right extremists, they're not really a powerful group. In fact, they're ostracized and removed by the establishment right. Which means the culture war factions are the corporate leftists who pander and desperately try to get support from the far left extremists. People like, we saw in the Project Veritas videos, the Bernie campaigners who are talking about insurrection and stuff like that and keeping the more crazy stuff a secret. So here's what we have. In the culture war, if you are left wing or support the left and the right wins, you're fine. That's nothing happens. If you support the left wing riots and protests and the culture war, the left wing intersectionalists, and the left wins, you're fine. Nothing happens. If you're a right winger and you support the right and they win, you're fine. Nothing happens. But if you're a right winger and the left wins, they put you up against the wall. Therefore, the wager dictates the safest place you can be is defending the violent lunatics. There's actually, it's the culture, I call it the culture wars wager. There's an easier way to explain this. Conservatives aren't marching to Twitter HQ with Molotovs. I mean, some right-wing individuals, conservatives, Trump supporters were on the steps of the state building with weapons. Nothing really happened. And the left shows up with bricks and they throw things and they attack people. So the reason I bring this up is just when you see journalists, right, saying things like from CNN, they're just firecrackers. When you see I don't know if you saw this clip, MSNBC reporter standing outside a burning building saying, no, well, hold on, it's peaceful. It's mostly peaceful here. It's like, dude, you're standing in a conflict zone. That is the definition of not peaceful. They give people training for this. These news crews send out morons. And you know what, man? I'm sorry. I know I'm a bit disrespectful, but this one is very, very personal to me because I have been on the ground and I've had my life put at risk by morons, people who don't know what they're doing when they step outside in this. I guess I'm lucky, right? I grew up on the south side of Chicago, so I'm no stranger to urban conflict when it arises. It was a constant scene. I hear a story from a friend. It's like, oh yeah, someone was dragging a carpet with feet sticking out the back of it through the alley last night. Yeah, we get it. We hear those gunshots go up. There was a fight outside the high school near my house. And all of a sudden, one dude pulled out a gun. And everyone's running and screaming. That was just normal life in the south side of Chicago. And I didn't even live in the worst part. So for me, maybe I inadvertently was granted this experience and this understanding. And it's not necessarily fair to say they don't deserve to get that experience as well. But I'll tell you what, man, if you step out in these situations and you don't know what you're doing, what to expect, then don't be surprised when this happens. Fox News crew harassed, chased by angry mob while reporting on protests outside the White House. Now I'm going to give him some credit here. I'm fair. I'm actually impressed with this guy. Let me read you this story. An angry mob of rioters stoked by the death of a black man were protesting at the White House. veteran reporter Leland Vittert was covering the protests in Lafayette Park just before 1 a.m. with 3 crew members when as many as a dozen masked protesters surrounded them, in footage caught by the Daily Caller. After a protester lunged at Vittert while he was reporting on air, the team made a beeline out of the park with the hostile and growing crowd in pursuit. Vittert and crew were punched and hit with projectiles as they fled, and a Fox crew camera was broken when a member of the mob tried to grab it. I actually want to say this guy deserves a little bit of respect. I only say a little bit, okay? I'm trying to be fair, but, I should put it this way. My respect to Leland Vittert for his calm head and his intelligent exodus from this hot situation. I respect that journalists need to go out and cover this stuff, and I don't know necessarily what else he could have done because he has a film crew with him. But I think a lot of journalists who enter these situations and don't prepare for it, I can't sympathize. However, when the mob came for this guy and his crew, he was very, very smart about it, and so I can respect that. He said, don't run, don't run, don't run. Smart move. When you run, everyone goes nuts. And that's when they jump on you and start punching you and going crazy. You calmly just walk out. And they might try and get you to agitate. They want you to escalate. Don't do it. Someone grabbed their camera and he says, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not. So he was smart about it, and that I can respect. However, I don't think they necessarily should have been covering these things or been in the situation in the first place. That's just my opinion. So I'm trying to be less harsh on this crew because they got out safely and smartly. Now, this crew right here deserves all the disrespect I can give. I'm sorry. I mean it. Now, I get it. The cops should not have been shooting at this reporter. But I'll tell you something, man. I was in Ferguson, and I don't remember this reporter's name, and I don't care to say it. But she's standing on West Florissant, and you hear live gunfire. And you know what she did? She goes, oh. And then just like run, like, and like, what are you nuts? What are these people doing? This one, right to my heart, man. I'll tell you why. I'm in Ferguson, all right? It was one of the first nights of the rioting. And Ferguson was nowhere near as bad as all this stuff. I'll be honest. And it was bad. I watched them torch a whole city block. They're burning the whole city down in Minneapolis. I'm in Ferguson. And what do we hear? Live gunfire. Guess what? Every single person on that street hits the deck. Yeah, when you grow up in these places, you know how to act. And the person that was sent with me just stood there, the only person standing up, ignoring everything, going, they're just fireworks. Do you see anybody walking around with fireworks? Do you see people walking around with guns? That's why it bothers me. These journalists get sent out. They're putting their coworkers' lives at risk, and they're putting their own lives at risk. Now, if you want to put your own life at risk, that's fine. But when these news organizations are too stupid to cover these things properly or know what to expect and to plan for this stuff and do proper security, these people, man. I remember when I was in Ferguson, I first went there for Vice, and that's when it was really frustrating. Like these, you'd think Vice of all people would have, nah, man. A lot of the Vice reporters had no experience doing this. They were just young enough to be stupid enough to go out on the ground and do this. But I'll tell you what, when everyone hits the deck, just hit the deck, bro. I came back. I was at Ferguson, and there I was. I'm with another reporter, a veteran filmmaker. We hear the live gunshots go off. I'm on the ground in 2 seconds. I look to my right. There's my buddy. Good sir. I'm proud. I was like, yes, this guy. I look to my left. What do I see? Local, a national news reporter for a major network, looking around confused, going, those fireworks? Buddy, did you see everyone hit the ground? You're the one who doesn't get it. You can find the video of me in Ferguson. It's a Vice highlight reel where I'm leaning up against, I'm like crouching behind this big box transformer, and you hear twangs. And then I look to my right. There's a buddy of mine. We're on the deck, and he's screaming, "Get down! Come here! Get down!" To watch these journalists come out and do these things, this is the stupidest thing. Breaking video: Louisville police fire rubber bullets at reporter live on TV. I'm sorry, man. I can't deal with this. You got a small woman walking up to the police line, staring as the guy pulls out his pepper ball gun, points it at the camera, and starts firing. And they're going, huh? What's happening? Oh, he's shooting at us. What? And the camera gets hit. And they're just like, huh? What? It's called move. It's called leave. It's called stop putting your people at risk. It's called stop going out into these conflicts if you are not prepared for them. CNN crew got arrested the other day. I prefer some footage over no footage. All right, so look, I get it. Maybe it's me. This is where I'll be a bit more pompous and elitist. But these people are putting lives at risk. They are. I get it. The footage is important to have. But I'll simplify this. These companies need to train their staff on how to deal with these things. These journalists need to have gone through training. They're not doing it. The news organizations are dying. They're falling apart. And this is what you see. Live gunfire. Now the police apologize for targeting the news crew. But it doesn't matter, man. If you don't know how to act in these situations, you're going to make it more dangerous for everybody else. You're putting everyone's lives at risk. For what? So you can film yourself standing in front of a bunch of cops? No, I get it. The cops are at fault there. What are you doing shooting at a small woman like this? What is this? Look at this. Let me play a little bit of this. I just want to show you. You see her walking with a backpack. First of all, let me point something out. What are you doing? She looks like a protester wearing a mask in that backpack. And they say, couldn't they see the camera? They don't know if she's with the camera. But let's be honest here. They shoot the camera too. So I'm just trying to point that out. Maybe not in this situation. They zoom in, and sure enough, a cop walks up, and you see him just pointing his pepper ball gun right at them. That is insane. All right, now I'll throw some shade at the cops. What are you doing? You just shot a news crew with pepper balls. That's going on everybody. You want people to sympathize with you? Never gonna happen. So let me just say, you know what, man? Maybe I'm just frustrated. Maybe it's frustrating to see all of this. Maybe everyone's gone nuts. Cooler heads will prevail. Chance favors they're prepared. Maybe that's reality. Maybe there are some of us that are calm and collected. Maybe there are some of us that bought some emergency food, right? While everyone else laughs about how much smarter they are than us. And then maybe when everything hits the fan, we were out weeks before. We're safe. We prepared for all of this. And maybe are some of these people who have no idea what's going on and just are totally clueless walking around. That to me should not be happening. It absolutely shouldn't. In Louisville, all right, where this is going down. So what is it? Several people were shot. 7 people were shot during the protest in Louisville. And at least one is in critical condition. In Oakland the other day, 2 federal officers shot. 1 died. This is the reality of what's happening. And you know what's funny? I'm getting messages from people. Hey, Tim, you going to go out in this? No, I'm not. You know why? Because there's a difference between what we've seen in the past and what we're seeing now. There's a difference. Now, journalists got to do it. And I'll say this. A lot of reporters, they're in better positions than I to be on the ground doing this. At this point, I probably have too much heat on me. People would see me, and it's just not good for anybody. It would cause an impact. But the main reason I wouldn't go here to these various protests, riots, I should say, and the reason I didn't go to many other major rioting events is because there's a big difference between people showing up and being angry about a major news story and people just smashing things. Right now, there are people with cell phone cameras filming everything. Do you really need to have your news crew go down there to film a row of police officers? It's questionable. A lot of people will probably say yes, so I'm not going to argue for or against that. But I'll tell you for myself, what would be accomplished by me being one more phone out of the 10,000 when this isn't about any individual? Oh, you can argue the protests, the rioting all started because of a catalyst, George Floyd. We're not there anymore. This is just chaos and crisis throughout various cities. So what do you want me to do? Would you want me to film one person throw a brick? I'm not going to do that. And that's why this is not unique to what's going on right now. It's not something new that's developed in my career. There were many protests and events throughout the past decade I ignored. The events that I liked to cover, that I thought were important, were specific and were about something specific. Occupy Wall Street, very specific. And you had protests all across the country. The Ferguson riots, very specific. It was about that one moment. Okay, this is beyond that. Smashing CNN is not about anything having to do with George Floyd. It has escalated well beyond that. So I could be on the ground covering certain things for sure. It won't be this widespread mass looting, chaos, and destruction trying to breach the barricades of the White House. I respect the journalists who are covering this because we need to know what's happening. But we're also entering a new age where people are filming everything as it is and the footage exists. I actually think it's better for me to sit back and show you what I can and try and bring these stories together, because I got a big one coming up at 4 p.m. For those on the podcast, you've already heard it. But it now seems there is a lot of evidence emerging that this is all being orchestrated. Oh, yeah. You want to call it a conspiracy? Fine. But I'll tell you what. I know a lot of these lefty protesters. They've prepared for this. They've planned for this. I'm not talking about government conspiracy or anything crazy like that. The governor of Minnesota thinks it is. He thinks foreign influence is affecting this. And I'll look at the evidence. I'll wrap it up there. The next segment for y'all on YouTube is coming up at timcast.net at 4 p.m. Stick around, because I'm going to show you some of this evidence. This stuff is freaky. I'm talking about like bricks being preset. I'm talking about potential police smashing windows, all this crazy stuff, and the governor calling it out. Stick around. I'll see you then. timcast.net.